Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Alice Gottesman. I'm the technical manager of LandScale, which is an initiative within the Rainforest Alliance. Today, I'll be talking about a participatory approach to landscape level sustainability, encompassing why involving communities and other local actors in data is crucial, and how it can lead to more durable and equitable outcomes. So every landscape has a story. And when I talk about landscapes, just for context, I mean geographic areas that are often 10,000 hectares, possibly hundreds of thousands, maybe millions, maybe a watershed, maybe a jurisdiction, maybe some other kind of geographic area. But within these spaces, it's really the people who live there who know it best. Local knowledge is incredibly important for designing solutions that actually work in the context they serve. This matters more than ever as we face a polycrisis encompassing climate change, biodiversity loss, and rampant pollution, all of which affect planetary health and human well-being. So with this in mind, and with data being inherently important for driving effective action, why do we often leave communities out of the data conversation? Data is often collected about communities or the spaces in which they exist, but not with or by them. Some groups or demographics can get excluded from the data collection process and ultimately from the results. Experts or institutions often control the narrative, deciding what gets measured, what counts as evidence, and how that's interpreted. The results are rarely shared back in ways that are actionable for communities, and this lack of meaningful participation can create mistrust. And with the rise of AI-driven data collection and analysis, there's an even greater risk that communities get excluded from shaping the narratives about their own landscapes and their own lives. But before going further into the details, I want to define what I mean when I talk about the data conversation, because it's more than just the numbers on a spreadsheet. It's how data is gathered, it's how it's stored, how it's shared, it's who interprets and influences the data, and it's who benefits from the outcomes that the data inform. And these dimensions reflect broader power structures and have real consequences for who gains and who doesn't from data. So I want to talk a little bit about what happens when communities are excluded from this conversation. In many cases, if participation is exclusive, it means that data is disconnected from lived realities, solutions fail or backfire, marginalized voices go unheard, inequities are reinforced, and trust is lost. Meanwhile, if participation is considered tokenistic, it may mean that communities experience consultation fatigue, local insights are overlooked, buy-in is weak, and solutions remain top-down. But when participation is truly inclusive, it can mean that there's a shared understanding of challenges, greater trust in data and decisions, locally relevant solutions, civic empowerment, improved transparency, and more durable, equitable outcomes. And other frameworks reinforce this spectrum. For example, from a 2020 report called Participatory Monitoring and Evaluation by INTRAC, they visualize participation as moving from informing to empowering, or from passive participation to ownership and empowerment. These visualizations help us see that there are degrees of participation and that empowerment is the ultimate goal. And I want to note here that the right type and level of participation will vary by context. Participation is not a universal fix for harms or inequities, but all participatory approaches recognize the value of local knowledge, lived experiences, and engagement. I really want to emphasize here that when we talk about community data engagement, it's not just a checkbox exercise. The levels and types of participation can dramatically shape the relevance, legitimacy, and impact of both the data collected and the decisions it informs. And we have evidence to support this. Just to give you a couple of examples, in one study of over 169 conservation projects worldwide, 56% of community-controlled cases reported positive outcomes for humans, habitats, and species. In contrast, only 16% of externally controlled cases were evidenced to have positive outcomes, while over 1/3 of those externally controlled cases were reportedly associated with negative effects for community well-being and for conservation. Further, another study found that community-based strategies can yield meaningful mitigation impacts and strong returns on investment, mitigating millions of metric tons of CO2 emissions by 2030 for less than $1 of local philanthropic investment per metric ton of CO2 emissions mitigated by 2030. That was quite a mouthful, but it really just shows that participatory approaches are not just socially beneficial, they're also cost-effective. So how can we operationalize participatory data approaches in practice, specifically in my case, in the context of landscape sustainability? This is where LandScale can come in. So LandScale is an integrated system for landscape level monitoring and evaluation. It provides an assessment framework, which is essentially a list of various metrics mapped to the UN SDGs, providing an idea of what to measure in a landscape related to ecosystems, human well-being, governance, and production. It provides a validation mechanism, which is in a sense a review of all data and information submitted throughout the assessment process, ensuring that the sources are reliable, the process follows our guidelines, etc. And a digital platform that kind of facilitates the assessment process. All of this enables credible, holistic landscape level sustainability assessments and also facilitates multi-stakeholder collaboration, helping initiatives monitor and address sustainability gaps while aligning with regional policies, programs, and practices. But I wanted to look at a specific example rather than just sharing what LandScale is. For example, the biocultural landscape Sierra Volcanica in Jalisco, Mexico. It's home to 48,000 people and spanning 196,000 hectares, providing sanctuary to biodiversity, productive farmland, and diverse livelihoods. And since 2020, the Rainforest Alliance has been working with local communities to improve its sustainability, using LandScale to guide actions. In this context, LandScale was initially used to generate a holistic baseline of the landscape, which informed its action plan and now supports ongoing performance monitoring and evaluation. The process of the assessment sparked participatory workshops, bringing stakeholders together, ranging from NGOs, government, local communities, financial institutions, and private sector, forming a landscape partnership and creating a shared understanding of the landscape's underlying dynamics. All of this led to shared vision for the landscape, increased trust among stakeholders, equitable access to the same data and understanding, stronger connection between local action and policy, a model for monitoring and evaluation of further biocultural landscapes in Mexico, and foundations for durable collaboration. But these takeaways are not only relevant to landscapes. It's about any place where people and data meet, because data for communities means bringing them to the table in contextually relevant ways to drive action while ensuring that data is understandable, relevant, accessible, and safeguarded. I heard earlier today the FAIR principles, which I think are great. In a world where AI increasingly mediates data-driven decisions, and in a world also of increasing polarization, embedding participatory practices is essential to make sure technology serves communities rather than replacing them. To share a closing thought, data is not the destination, it's a starting point for conversation and change. And one question that we continue to explore at LandScale is what forms data needs to be in for communities to truly engage, contribute, and benefit. This is one I'd be really curious to hear all of your thoughts as data experts. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'm really keen to explore this conversation with you and want to open it up for questions and comments and discussion. I will flag, while I am the technical manager, I am not technical in a software point of view. So please keep that in mind. Question?
So you have mentioned about, first of all, thank you for the presentation because you are talking about a specific context, which is, I would say, landscapes. Very peculiar for what I do usually. So it's a new way of thinking about new stuff there. And you have mentioned a lot of FAIR principles for what concern data, but I suppose that you are also applying CARE principle in this context. I mean, it's just yet another but standard that is kind of recognized at international level that deals exactly with this aspect of involving the communities within projects dealing with their data, and LandScale is part of that specific country. So I just want to know if you have tried to also applying CARE principles in these contexts for what concern data and these kind of things.
Can you define out the CARE principles, please?
Oh, yeah. Yes. I have to remember by heart right now. So let me check. I don't want to make mistake there. It's
responsibility and these are they are designed to organize the principles and more or less, you know, to most analysis and they get another principles that values in the community. But the care principle well designed for data governance, distribution of data and so on. The commission, for example, is nowadays trying to implement the principle also in another situation that as the city was going to the city, the needs of the city, dealing with the problems of the principle, the principle are the core aspects and the importance of so different way to approach this issue in the communities, more or less following this care principle. But care principle are the example that are the new things in the center, even though they were particularly both ideas. So, for example, we are in the communities in the some history and also the European they are particularly care principles. They are trying to approach it not only for that, but they myself. They were designed for the community, but they can implement it for every kind of communities or state communities.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that context. I guess to kind of answer your question, the way in which we've designed it is with a lot of flexibility. The local initiatives are the ones defining what kind of data they're collecting, what data they're using to inform the metrics they've selected, how they're undergoing the analysis, and then they use our platform to upload the results. We're kind of providing a structure to go through the assessment, but we're not managing the data ourselves. The data is ultimately owned by the local initiatives. And so the CARE principles, for example, are something that we would share with our users and try to enforce through our guidelines, through our validation mechanism. I'm not certain if that's something explicitly embedded within our guidelines, but it's something I can check. Yeah, thank you. We can look into that.
Hi, thank you for this. I think a lot of it also resonates. I think I was wondering, I think a lot of the knowledge and wisdom from like local communities also come in different forms. And as you said, like near the end of the presentation as well, I was wondering what was the process like, kind of like translating all these like different forms of knowledge and also the participatory like activities and like data collection into like, you know, something more systematic.
Yeah, it's an ongoing challenge, to be honest with you. Our framework was designed to honestly, it's quite quantitative because that's the easiest way to get information that can be validated in kind of a hard scientific way, if that makes sense. We're scoping out how we can include more qualitative information encompassing like indigenous stories, local knowledge within our process. We haven't quite yet figured that out. It's something we're hoping to learn with data experts, with indigenous communities, and with other kinds of stakeholders, because that's a bit of a gap at the moment. In terms of how it works in practice, typically the local initiative brings in either experts to lead the assessment or they lead it themselves. They host a range of participatory workshops, bringing different stakeholders together to discuss what's most relevant in our context, what do we need to be assessing, what's important for our strategy and our vision for this landscape. And it's not just it doesn't just bring value to creating an assessment and having a structure for that. It's also in building trust and building those relationships for onward collaboration. Hopefully that kind of answers the question.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.